And here we are again. Empathy in Action, Central New York. We are in a series of interviews with individuals collecting voices from around Central New York in the community to take a picture of what we look like today and where we are in the pandemic by interviewing a wide variety of people from different aspects, bringing us different opinions and thoughts. And we have an interesting one today. So today we have a business owner, a barber who is dealing with the reopening and having customers come in. We are also, at the same time, speaking with a retired New York State trooper. So we have a couple of different things that we're talking about today in relation to where Central New York stands right now amid the pandemic, amid the isolation, the quarantine, the reopening, but then also with the racial unrest and the social justice issues that are coming up. So we'll start with, this is Pete Beratta, and he is right now coming to us from Marcellus, New York, and Slate Hill Wellness, which is a unique setup as is, with a wellness center, with Pete working in the front and his lovely wife running a yoga studio in the back. So if you want to give us a little good morning and framework about where you're coming from right now, let's get started.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pete, as she introduced. My wife and I have been married 30 years. It'll be 31 here in a month. So we've gone through a lot with being a trooper and everything, and now, owning a business and having it roughly open for about 3 years, which when we went into the timeline, 3 years was our goal for breaking even. 3 to 5, it building starts paid for itself. 5 years, maybe make a few bucks and go on vacation somewhere. 3 years hits, pandemic hits. So, and we got to shut down. So that's kind of where we're dealing with coming back into. I've been back open for a little over a month and a half now. So so that's where we'll be. You'll hear my viewpoints from how that's all going down and where we're sitting.
Yeah. So a lot of adjustments had to be made. Obviously a lot of us right around March 16th suddenly realized that our world was changing. And so where were you right around that day, and what decisions did you have to make moving forward?
So actually, when the zombie apocalypse hit and the news was really coming out, we were actually in Florida. It was spring break. Our son plays baseball in college, and we were down there watching his team play baseball. And it was kind of funny because we're sitting amongst the parents, but everybody was just kind of spread out because it was just that kind of setting. You could spread out and sit and just enjoy the sun and everything. And we're all on our phones, which that's how we all get our news this day. You're never too far from work if you work in an office setting, and not a service industry. And so we're all kind of on our phones, and we're all reading the email from the president of the college almost simultaneous. It was funny. My wife, Dina, was sitting next to me, and she's reading the email out loud to me, and I can hear another lady reading it to her husband. And it was just, we're all reading the email that, hey, this is an issue. And at the time, back in March, Florida was not getting hit as hard as they are now. So it down there was actually the place to be, because, and every day we learn more and more about this virus and everything. And one of the things at the time was that it only survives in a cool, damp, cold climate, which of course we are now learning that is not the case, because it's heavy in Florida. So it was interesting that we were there, but there's teams down there that were from everywhere. We were actually playing a team from Iowa at the time. and then you get talking to some of the other kids that are wandering around, all college kids, and they get it. And, and every one of them saying how we're going home and we're turning in our uniform and we're done. The season's over. The school's telling us we're going home. And that's pretty much what we were getting in the email from the president, so he was trying to get information out immediately, because again, at the time being spring break, everybody's home. And in where my son goes to school, Wells College in Aurora, New York, some of the kids, and I would assume this happens at most other colleges too, or happened, weren't from around the area. So they're allowed to stay on campus.
Right.
Well, now that's an issue because we're trying to get them home, and the cost of the flight, grabbing a flight 2 days away, it really gets expensive. So, but being in Florida, so they're trying to deal with everything. So being in Florida, what ended up happening, you saw several different things. Some teams from New York, actually, we were supposed to play a team, I won't mention any schools, but we were playing a team the next day that when we showed up, they weren't there.
Yeah.
Their athletic director had called them the night before, late in the evening, and said, get on the bus, you're coming home. Which again, at the time, everybody's thinking, why would you do that? New York was the crazy, that we were the hot spot in New York. You're safer here. Matter of fact, we were contemplating seeing if the house that we had rented was still available and staying another week or so. It was like, because that's how it was. And at the time, Disney was only discussing shutting down, and they actually did, I believe, the day after we left, because one of the other things I do is I officiate Division I college football. So I'm in contact with guys from all over the country that are dealing with this. And a friend of mine who I was talking to was from Dallas, Texas area. Come to find out, he was at Disney while we were in Florida. We were literally only 20 minutes apart. We didn't know it at the time until we got talking. And he said, Pete, he goes, amazing how one day it's just up and running, everything's normal, and then the next day, the day after they actually shut down, because people still had reservations or whatever, they were allowing them to stay, they just weren't opening the parks. He said it was a ghost town, just a ghost town. Nothing to see a major park like that. And then again, talking to him, I could see things. We both flew in and out of Orlando. When we went, it was business as usual. Just the airport didn't seem overly busy. It didn't seem overly empty. It just was normal. Everything was fine. And then when I talked to him, he said that was a ghost town. He said there were maybe 20 people on the flight, which was not usual. And so that's where we were. Getting home was easy. The school made the decision, and that was one of the, when I mentioned how, New York was the hot spot, down there was the place to be. Our athletic director actually told our coach and the team, listen, he goes, I'm going to let you stay and play, write it out, and then you got to come back. He said, but you got to play a team that's already there. So that was one thing, a decision that was made that I felt was the proper decision, in that, because like we were supposed to play a team from New York that was coming down.
Yeah.
So he was like, I don't want you playing them because they've been here, could be exposed. If you're going to play, you're going to play a team that's already there. So the facility was very accommodating into adjusting us, and we played some teams that were already there.
Yeah.
So that worked out well. And then we came home. She was shut down immediately. Yoga studio was closed. It was closed when we were down there. The announcement was made by our governor that nope, yoga studios, gym's done. I came back. He hadn't shut barbershops down. I had, I think, 3 days I worked, and then he made the decision, barbershop salons closed, and then we were closed for, 3 months?
Right. And then it's, what assistance is being offered, and, regarding mortgage, regarding, pay, regarding anything. How do we keep afloat?
Right. So fortunately for us, our situation, I'm a retired trooper, so I have a pension, and owning the building and our own home and everything, the pension, if we had really scrimped and ate nothing or didn't, whatever, went very cheap on everything, the pension would have covered probably close to 95% of everything. As is, it covers about 90%. So the barber shop and the yoga studio do help us stay afloat. So with that, we had to dip into the savings a little bit, called up the financial guy and I said, look, I might not be the sharpest uh, tool in the shed, but I can add. and I said, depending on how long this goes, I'm gonna need some scratch. So we did dip into the what we had savings and got money that way.
But you also had 2 of 3 kids coming home too.
Correct. Yes, yes. The
Well,
college boy came home. No, that's
yeah,
okay. The college boy came home, and
yeah,
so that's another. And not that I'm not feeding him when he's at college, but I've already paid the room and board, so it's not an extra expense. Well, now he's home; it's an extra expense, and an extra body and laundry, and just everything that goes with another body. And then our other daughter, who was living up in Potsdam, she's a licensed massage therapist, so she hadn't been working. So she finally called, and she tried to go as long as she could. She finally called and said, "Look." We're like, come on home.
yeah.
So she came back with her girlfriend, and so now that was 3 extra bodies, mouths, and and again, space in the house. Unfortunately for us, during the whole time owning the building, or at least having this, we had a place to go if we needed to get away. And that was huge. Especially with elderly people, I should say, or maybe even people with younger kids. They were stuck home.
Yeah.
They were stuck home. There was no, let's go to the mall. Let's just run them around. I mean, you could go to a park, but what if there's people at the park? There was supposed to be no contact whatsoever. And so fortunately for us, we had this. We could come up here with the dogs. We have, there was a little bit of property to walk around or at least sit outside and enjoy life that way. As far as loans or money, extra money that way, the government was offering PPPs, and but that was for businesses with employees,
right,
originally. And again, this is just like the every day we change. One of the terms that came out was the new norm. Well, I hate that term because the new norm changes every day.
yeah, it's not
Every day there's a new norm. And so the new norm, so they came out with an original loan, PPP, and it was for your employees. Well, we don't have employees. It's just my wife and I. And so therefore, the way it was worded, we didn't qualify for that. And eventually down the road, they changed the wording. And one of the reasons they really had to change the wording was I had a gentleman come in after it was over and I reopened and we got talking. He works for a small company and his boss has 10 employees, him being one of them. And what ended up happening is he went and got the loan, one of the loans. And originally the way it was worded was that it was a grant. So you could put down how many employees you had, what you needed the money for employee payroll is what it was. And so he put down that he had 10 employees and then he needed whatever he needed, but he had to put down the 10 employees. So then what happens is when he gets the loan or the grant, I should say, because it was a grant at first,
right.
When he called all the employees and said, hey, I got the money. So if you come back to work, I can pay you and you can pay your bills. And, life hopefully doesn't change that much. Well, 3 of them, he said, basically said, look, why would I come back? I'm making more money collecting unemployment, and there was a $600 a week bonus payment that they were giving people in this situation due to the pandemic. And they were like, I'm making more money. So those 3 people didn't come back. Well, the wording of that original loan grant basically said that if not all employees come back, it now becomes a loan and he has to pay it back.
Right.
So again, then there was an uprising and then the wording got changed. And then the other thing was large companies were taking advantage of that. So, and we have large corporations that owned all these little ones down here. So they were snatching up millions of dollars in the beginning by applying from the smaller businesses, but of course they were getting it. And then we got to a point where the money was gone. There was nothing. Nobody could, even the little guy couldn't get anything. And so we never went down that road because I was, just seeing how things had gone down, not a conspiracy theorist, but at the same time, I don't trust government, having worked for it for many years. And we just decided, I don't want it. We don't want it. I don't want it to turn into another loan that I've got to pay back with interest.
Right.
You know, I mean, if it was a 0% thing, I guess that would be a different story, but they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
contacted the bank, and they were so overwhelmed. They had no idea what they were doing and couldn't even figure out the paperwork. This was just thrown at them. The next time I contacted them, they said, yeah, we have so many applications on file, we're not taking anymore. The next time I contacted them, they said, that one's gone. You know, that lump sum is gone, but we still have outstanding applications from our first. I mean, it was just craziness. So that I think it was hard to muddle through. I think if you didn't have the the high-powered accountants and financial people and lawyers and all of that to figure it all out and do the application, I think you were left a little bit lost on the whole process.
Yeah, being a small business person, I felt bad for the business person who that's their only source of income.
Yeah.
Again, I had the pension, so I had some savings. I've been around for a while, so I felt bad for the person that I really hope it doesn't happen, but I foresee a lot of businesses just shutting down. I can't catch up. I can't catch up.
Yeah.
And I've had several new guys come in for cuts, and they've basically said, look, and we're very loyal to our barbers and hair salons and whatnot, cosmetologists. They would come in and it's their first time in, and they're telling me that they've been going to the same guy for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is. He's in his 70s, he's in his 80s, he might even be in his late 60s. And he's just decided, you know what? I've never taken, in my case, it was, just under 3 months when I had to reopen. Most of these guys had never taken 3 months off in their life in a row like that. They maybe taken a week or two. They had 3 months off, and they were like, you know what? I enjoyed the time off, being with my family, whatever. And then with all the steps and stuff protocols that we had to now adhere to reopen per our governor and the government, they were just like,
yeah.
Why should I deal with that at my age? I'm happy. I'm fine. And they just would shut their shop down. So I mean that's one way of a business shutting, and then of course the other way is just there's no way I'm going to recoup my money and get back on my feet. I need to go work for a company.
Yeah.
Go get a quote unquote real job, I guess would be.
So you have made really, really nice use of your time during your shutdown, and built a meditation trail. So not only is that a really, really wonderful addition to your property there, but also that must have been a really nice and kind of a achievement, along with a peaceful and calming and creative experience that you turned this into.
Kept me busy.
Yeah.
Kept me busy. My wife had mentioned it. So a couple of years ago, I had built, we didn't even know what we were going to call it. She's calling it the Grove now. So it was just this little area off the side of the building over here where she could do outdoor yoga is what she wanted to do. So I'd cleared an area. It still got the trees, the bigger trees I left growing up so people can move around it. And I kind of outlined it with railroad ties, wood, whatever I had on the property, and just kind of salvage stuff. And she loved that. And then she mentioned a meditation trail would be wonderful. Now we don't own a ton of property here. We have enough that when this all went down, I'm like, all right, I ain't got time. Because really, the only reason we don't do projects like that, guys, is because we tell them we don't have time. Well, I had no argument at this point. So I would come up here. We fell into a really nice routine, and I think that's what a lot of people ended up doing too. I'd come up with our dogs, I'd go for my run, and then immediately I'd go out and just go to town on the project. And it gave me something to do again, instead of just sitting here. One of the jokes with the COVID-19 is the COVID-15. You either gained 15 pounds or you lost 15 pounds because depends on your lifestyle. Fortunately, my wife and I each lost more than the 15. So, but then it just kind of gave me something. Then eventually when she'd show up, she'd do stuff at home, and then she'd come up to do some work. We'd have coffee, and she'd check what I did and give tips or whatever. And of course, then I tell, get out of here. I already got my idea. Get out of my idea. So yeah, so I did that, and then with it, you start thinking about other things you can do, and along the trail, that's what ended up happening. I did have to cut a couple of trees down for different reasons, not trail related. But then I was like, wait a minute, these are long pieces of wood. I could use these. And I ended up building it's about an 8-foot by 8-foot roughly shack, and put some slab wood across the top. It's not, I mean, if you sat there and it's raining, you're going to get wet. Trust me, it's nothing special. But she was like, what is that? I said, kind of along the trail. And it's literally right in the middle of the trail, as Kristen has seen. And it was still area to sit. I built some benches out of some other logs that I had and stuff, and just a little area to sit, rest, meditate. I said, it's a meditation trail. I said, you can put something in here. And then we were sitting out there one day with a cup of coffee, and I said, one of the other things I said was, maybe a friend can come and strum on the guitar. We know a lot of people that are like that. And I go, we stick them in there, and they can play the guitar, sing, whatever. And then we can tell people to come on over. BYOB +1, that's my new thing. I tell everybody BYOB +1, the plus one's for me. And but then I said, and immediately she said it was just like, she goes, you could see the light bulb go off, and it was like immediate just with my sentence. I said, we need an amphitheater. So I ended up buying retaining wall stuff, and I built a little amphitheater in front of it, so that eventually when this all breaks and we can have a little get together, we're going to have somebody come sing and just everybody just have fun. So and then, like I said, off of it, there's, we can do this over here now, we can do this, and I can come back there. And so next year, originally I thought I had done 5 years worth of honeydew stuff. Apparently I haven't.
Yeah.
So,
No, that never works.
That is true. That is true. So more projects have stemmed from it.
Yeah.
So, but now that I'm open and I have less time, I have a little bit of an excuse.
Yeah.
But
well, talk about gifts and things that you're taking into the future from this. I mean, you have this physical, beautiful gift that you have created that you'll be able to take forward after and into years to come. So that's an awesome thing to see.
Yes, thank you.
So tell us about reopening now and how that's going for you. You've obviously got lots of requirements and things that were set down by the county and the state. And is everything going all right for you?
Yeah, everything's fine. There's just all the stuff that he made us do, to be honest, we could have done 3 months ago, or when he shut us down. He really didn't make us do that much more in that we could have done it then. But this was new. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what this was, and can we combat it, and how do we, So I mean, there's just a little bit more on the hygienic end of things, which, it being a barber shop, salon, anything like that, we're already hygienic conscious to begin with, because we have to. I'm bringing somebody else into the same chair a guy just sat in, so new towels, everything is, it just, so, and with us, there was no protocol on like using your clippers or your scissors that you had, that he was making you clean them. There was no recommendations. There was nothing. So what we did here was our daughter, who came home, licensed massage therapist. She's also a cosmetologist, so she kind of knows the business. So she was helping me here. And so between, having been around a few years, I had multiple sets of things when it comes to my guards, my clippers. So what she would do is, so the immediate first customer, I'll clean stuff from the night before type thing. So when I was done with him, and one of the protocols that the governor had said was we can only have one person in the shop at a time. I get that. Because then, and no waiting area. Because if I had somebody sitting in my waiting area, well, now I got to disinfect that, and that's, I get it. So when that guy would leave, my daughter would then have a nice fresh set to go in. So while I'm sweeping up and getting ready for the next customer, because it was appointments only, so she would bring the clean set over, and then she would take the dirty set and clean it up and disinfect it, and it would be ready for the next person. and we ended up buying more capes so that we could just have one cape per person, and then after maybe 4 or 5 haircuts, throw in a load of laundry and just sort of keep it, because we have our own laundry right here, and keep it going and fresh so that I could keep up, because the pace was unbelievable when we reopened. Because guys, one gentleman came. I mean, this is my COVID luck, though my wife is loving it, and so therefore I'm keeping it until football season. But one guy came in, and he was just walked in the door, looked at me, and he said, he's a regular, he comes in all the time. He goes, I don't think my hair was this long in the '60s, he said. So I get it, and so guys were coming back, and there was that, and then there was, can you fix what my wife did, or so. But yeah, so I mean, for me, just the protocols, nothing changed that much that I could have done it 3 months before.
Right.
But again, nobody really knew how bad this could be.
Yeah, exactly.
And how bad it was.
Still trying to figure things out, really.
Yeah.
Just like you said, every day learning new things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, again, I'm going to use Florida as an example, because that's what we were talking about earlier, and I can associate to it being there, having been there, I should say, when it was going down. They reopened, and now they're one of the worst states in the country.
Yeah. I mean, I think we tend to forget that New York City was the hotspot, and Central New York had its finger on the pulse of New York City. When I talked to the hospital people up here, they're like, that's what we were watching the entire time. And that's what we were preparing for. We were in contact with them. So a lot of Central New York already had an idea of what was coming our way.
Right.
And watching that and being part of that and hearing it every single day, I think has framed and set up what we're doing today. That we still feel the need for isolation. We still feel the need for being safe. Whereas, now we're looking at the other states, and these quarantines are being set up that they can't even come here and visit without quarantining for 2 weeks, because they experience the entire thing differently than us, and we know what can happen. So I think it sets up a little, microcosm here for us with a different viewpoint.
And another thing that hurt, and again, we there's knee-jerk reactions under the thought-out plan, and the knee-jerk reaction you have to have on certain things. You have to have a knee-jerk reaction to at least start the process, and I get that. And as you're talking about New York City being the big thing, well, what ended up happening too was a lot of healthy people that didn't have it, whatever, got out of New York City.
Yeah.
Well, what we didn't realize at the time was not everybody was healthy. They might have been asymptomatic, which meant they had it, but they weren't really going to get it. But now when they left and came to visit family or stay with family in a different, and again, if you're not from New York, you don't get that New York City and New York State are completely separate. Everybody associates them as the same if they're not from here. Well, they're not the same. And when they were coming out and staying with their families, then it increased in some of the outlying areas rather than just New York City.
Exactly. And there's a lot of, as soon as someone realized that there was going to be a quarantine or isolation or anything like that, they decided, well, let's not do it in New York City. Let's do it, on the Cape. Let's do it, in upstate New York with family, So there was a lot of moving out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes a big
and there were, because we didn't know, and there was the who cares attitude. There were a lot of people that weren't following the rules, which there were a few rules at first, but one of the biggest ones was wear a mask. But we weren't told that we had to. And you could walk into a grocery store or a hardware store and not have it on, and nobody said anything. And then after a couple of weeks, I remember going into one of the larger chain stores, and a guy's walking in front of me, doesn't have a mask on, but again, it wasn't mandatory, but this one business was requiring it. And she said, the lady that was greeting at the front there, she's like, do you have a mask? He goes, yeah, it's in the car. She goes, you can't come in without it. So then that was, and I did notice at that point in time, which like I said, was 2 or 3 weeks in, then you notice that everybody's walking around with one on.
Yeah. Well, we have determined that you are a man of many talents. So let's go to what almost feels like um, the other side of a wellness center, you know, in the range of occupations,
Mhm.
and retired New York State trooper. I learned a lot speaking with you when we did our pre-interview a week ago, because I needed to know the logistics of, you know, the training that goes into a New York State trooper versus that of a police officer, because what we see at what's going on in Central New York and all over the nation is police departments mostly being on the front lines of protests and rallies and marches and things like that. And, you know, one of my questions was, where are the troopers in this? Where were they? Were you there, but you weren't in uniform? Were you asked to back up? And how does that logistically work? And you gave me a great explanation on the troopers being more of a rural training. Uh, so can you just give me a little bit of the structural difference and where, and the viewpoint that you have towards what's going on here based on your background?
So yes, with that, one of the things that we discussed was that the New York State Troopers are more of a rural organization. We deal with property more than we deal with people. Houses getting broken into and cars and things being stolen. We deal with trying to recover the property more than a city police department, which where most of our issues in this time of everything is going on are in the larger cities. And in New York we have 4 or 5. You have New York City, Albany, Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, Binghamton, Watertown, maybe. But I don't think we have any issues in some of the, I should say that we don't. I don't live there, so I don't know. But we don't, as New York State Troopers, and I'm going to say we, that was a lifetime ago, by the way, as far as I'm concerned. They don't patrol in the cities per se, um, uh, because we're rural. But we do go into the cities if we're asked or needed. So I mean, if I was driving down the road in the patrol car, and you know, I mean, here, okay, this is the town of Marcellus, and that's the city of Syracuse, not that they border, and I see a crime in the city of Syracuse, that's in the city. No, that's not how it works, you know. But at the same time, we don't patrol around the cities looking for vehicle and traffic infractions, crime in general, whatever. But again, if we're asked to go in, we can. And we do have units in New York City. That's been for I don't know how long that's been that we've actually had uniform patrol in the city of New York. But I do know that with some of the things that are coming out, which I'm sure we'll get to shortly, the PBA delegate or president, who's the Police Benevolent Association, is what that stands for, who the union that represents the troopers. He has actually called for our governor to take the troopers out of the city due to the fact that legislation and law was passed down in New York City that if anything happens, the city, the Attorney General's office will not back the trooper or police officer. You have to have your own like coverage. You have to have your own insurance for civil liability, which shouldn't be. Which so what it should, you should be covered, and then you're protected. I shouldn't say you're protected. You're represented by the Attorney General's office as a police officer. And if there is a wrongdoing, then you're not covered by them. But what this legislation is trying to, it's just you're on your own. Period. End of story. Which a lot of
So
police officers don't.
that's New York City, and did it actually happen, or
It's
it's
happening. It's happening. That's why a lot of guys, like guys got off the SWAT units down there, and where was the other place? I can't remember what city it was, but a lot of them have just they've gotten off the special details because those are the units that get responded to into when there's a protest, a riot, or something like that. They're the ones sent. Well, if they're not being um, indemnified, they're like, we're not coming. which,
Interesting. I had no idea. That's really interesting.
right, yeah, yeah,
Because there must be something empowering about that. If you are a police officer and you're called into something and you talk about the knee-jerk reaction or doing something that may not be civilly correct,
right, right.
you've got a backup, and now
And
you don't.
yes, and what's empowering, just to use the term that you use, what's empowering is that it allows the police officer to make a decision in an emergency situation.
Yeah,
Where if I'm in an emergency situation and I know you're going to second guess me, peace out, man.
yeah,
It's just you can't second guess somebody who you've called. Somebody's called, or we've come across an emergency situation, and now I've got to make a decision, a split-second decision in this emergency to protect myself, the public, whoever, whatever. And now you're going to second guess me? I mean, I had a split
yeah,
second to make a decision,
yeah,
and so that's what's empowering about being indemnified on the back end of it.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So something else is that I thought that I've thought more about since we talked was that there's a different situation that you are reacting to, almost, be it if you are a police officer in a city or if you're a trooper rurally. So if a trooper is more prepared and set to deal with property and things like that, uh, and I know the training goes behind this, as you said, you are dealing with people possibly after the fact, or most of the time after the fact. So there is a communication, there is a personal setup, there is a feeling when you walk in the door to talk to someone that's different than if you are responding to a burglary in action, a domestic dispute. A lot of the things having to do with the protests and rallies and, damaging property. So you were saying that when you're called to something like that, which I think we can imagine police officers over and over and over again, they're called to emergency situations and they're not walking in thinking about, I'm going to turn this peaceful. They're walking in thinking, I'm dealing with a problem.
Yes. I'm not called unless there's a problem.
That's right. So I'm walking into a problem, and that frame of mind is walking into it. Whereas the troopers might have more communication training or things like that because they're not generally walking into something on fire.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, and no. I mean, yeah, yes. I mean, but every day, you never know what you go in every day, and who knows what's going to happen. It could be your last day. It might,
Yeah.
and when you go into a situation, the biggest thing that the two biggest weapons that I was always taught that I had in the academy, and when I got out and with my senior man and just working the road, and a lot of stuff comes with experience too. The two biggest weapons I had were here and here. I don't. The gun is third. That gun's the last resort. I don't want to pull it out. I'm trained to use it. I'm trained in when I can use it and how I can use it. And you hope in your career that you never have to. Fortunately, I never did. But you can get yourself out of a lot of trouble in situations with your mouth. It's just and then, but with that, we don't deal with as people as much. And we do deal with people on a daily basis. We pull people over. I mean, you're pulling many cars over a day. Depends on where you work. If you're a throughway trooper, you're pulling probably 40 cars a day over, just a guess, And if I'm just a rural guy, I might be only pulling 10 cars over a day, but I got to deal with that person. Where the city, they're just responding to call after call to call, which is usually a disturbance or fight or whatever it is, that they're immediately dealing with a person. I might get called to a burglary where I'm showing up and it's already happened. So I'm getting what was stolen, and then now, all right, let's go check the pawn shops. Let's go. All right, let's go check the usual suspects, and go from there. And we just, so with time, you end up talking to people more, but they're just, city people are just constantly, it's all they, I shouldn't say it's all they do. It's probably 95% of what they do is dealing with a person. Property is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And we're property, and then we're dealing with the people to get to the property. So
yeah. So I appreciate that perspective, that different perspective. So would you like to personally comment on how you feel the protests and the rallies and the things are being dealt with today?
So with a lot of things, and one of the things we didn't discuss or bring up, but the issue, the incident that happened in Minnesota, and the police officer, I felt bad for the two guys that were watching compared to the two guys that were acting, because the two guys that were acting were the training officers that had time experience. The gentleman just passed away from the whole thing, and there comes a point in time when, hey, I've got control of the situation, and you have to know that here so that you could take a step back. I felt bad for the two guys just because, I mean, should they have stepped up? Yes, absolutely. They should have stepped up and said, hey guys, we got this. There's four of us. There's one of him. One guy had 3 days on, one guy had 4 days on. So,
just to be clear, we're talking about the George Floyd incident.
Right.
Kind of, the trigger that set a lot of this.
Yes.
And we saw the gentleman there with the knee on George Floyd's neck for 8.5 minutes. And then the two officers that were with him, one was on duty for 3 days, and the other one,
I think 4 days.
4 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about the police mentality and how, us on the outside think a lot about that it's a club and you back up the other person. Your perspective on it came out a little bit different about how this is the person, so that the trainee is looking at the other person saying, this is the person who's going to fill out my evaluation. And this is the person who's going to determine if I move up, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, that's not going through his mind at the time, because
Exactly.
I'm sure watching what's good, but it's there. It's there. Yes, it's there. And at the same time, with that, not only is he the guy grading me, and this is the guy that knows what's going on. This is, I mean, we learn the book way here, and then we get out here, and the first thing your field training officer is going to tell you, he's going to say, all right, now you're going to learn how we really do it. Just because it's different, you can't, the book is one thing, but this is how it's really done, because we don't have the book. We're not doing it with a book, so that is going through his head, and and again, he's looking at it going, this is the guy that knows what's going on, and with that, and I think I did mention this when we talked before, and it's not just the police. I saw a video where there was a guy, he had come out of an establishment. What happened in there, I don't know what happened. He comes out of the establishment, and he's screaming about being mistreated, and he's standing there, but he's like, I'm from New York, this isn't going to happen, I'm from New York. I don't know where it happened. And he's just, but there's just somebody standing there videoing, because that's what we do these days with the phone. We video more than we act. And this is clearly what happens in this situation. And these are just civilians. And he goes up to the camera, I'm from New York, this isn't going to happen. Well, then he starts walking down the sidewalk, and he confronts a guy who's just standing there. He's just standing on a completely separate store, and he's just standing there, and this guy gets in his face, and I don't know what he says. And the guy says something back, and then the guy says something back to him, and then pushes him. And this is the original guy, and the guy that's just standing there, well, now he's going to defend himself. It's fight or flight. And he pushes him back, and he's much bigger than the instigator. And he pushes him, he knocks him down, they're rolling around, and eventually he's on top of him. And he's on top of him, and the other guy's, his stomach is on the ground, and this guy's sitting on top of him, and he is pummeling him. right, left to the, you know, I mean, and he is connecting. It's not like, you know, your typical fight where a lot of them aren't. He's, and there's one guy still video. And there's another guy who you clearly can see wants to come in and be like, all right, hey, guy, this is over. But there's other people around. We as a society, for some reason, have decided that filming things and watching them and commenting after is more of a, you know, instead of
Right.
getting in there,
Right.
going, being the referee. Somebody's got to be a referee at some point in time. Say, all right, guy, man, that's enough. He's had enough. You win. You won the fight. Let's get out of here. And I mean, he eventually gets off him, but this guy's laying there. He's completely dazed.
So here we are, you know, so quick to jump to judgment because of what we see a police officer doing. Because, you know, the police officer, he is set up to serve. We think he should know better, but we're all just watching. No one's doing anything about it. And then the exact same thing is happening just in day-to-day, no police officers involved, and we're all still just watching.
Right.
And no one's doing anything. So it is a systemic problem in our society right now with not taking action.
Yeah.
You know, it's that knee-jerk reaction again, you know, it's fear. And if I get involved, am I going to be the one who's being pummeled? If I get involved, am I going to be the one on the ground? You know, it's a toss-up, but it does exist everywhere within our society because we are separating ourselves with the camera. That's protection. You know, we've all got our phones on us and we all can record, and losing any type of connection. So, you know, your phrasing with, you know, this and this are my best weapons. We're not using this.
We're not using that.
No one's using it. Like, how can we all learn to use this better?
Right.
To at least feel enough confidence to try to say something, to say, hey, you know, this has gone far enough, or hey, can I get help, or hey, how do we make this happen? You know, at least taking that step. We could all probably be doing that better in every single situation. And you know, right now we're finding it in much smaller segments of, you know, I'm sitting at a restaurant and someone's walking in without a mask on. I could help possibly protect myself and my loved ones and the other people here by saying, hey, what do you think about putting on your mask when you come in here? I mean, no one wants to say anything.
Well, you know, and it's funny because Dina and I, we went out to the beach the other day on our day off, and then we went out for a bite to eat afterwards. And we go to the first restaurant we wanted to try, and sign right out front: do not come in unless you have a mask on. Keep it on until you get to your table. That's when you can take it off. And anytime you leave your table, you have to have the mask back on. Clear as day. So then the wait was too long. So we decided we'll go to this restaurant next door. So we go to that restaurant, and the sign out front there said, one person per party can come in and talk to the hostess with a mask on. And then you will be served or treated. And so I'm like, all right, let me go in and see. So I go in, and the guy's like, oh yeah, no, we got a table for you right now. I said, all right, great. And he goes, okay, go back outside and wait, and then we'll come out and get you. Great. Absolutely. That's okay. Those, not that I don't live by rules, but that those are simple rules, and it's just wear a mask and nobody inside and whatnot, you know.
Yeah.
And again, communicating, it's just nobody's telling anybody. You see the riots and the protesters, and they're confronting, and it's face to face with the police, and the police guys just standing there.
Yeah.
Well, why can't you talk to them? Why can't you say, you know, I haven't once heard, you know, look, there's a fine line between being a protester and a rioter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and as much as if that's your philosophy of, you know, you want to rip that statue down because whatever he represents or that thing represents or whatever, you want to rip it down, and that's your philosophy. No, I'm sorry, you just crossed the line. That's a crime. that's criminal mischief, painting it, all that stuff. Nobody's just come out and say, hey guys, do your thing. Go ahead. That's absolutely fine. But you can't do that. There's ways to get that statue taken down, and just ripping it down is
Yeah.
not one of them. That's a crime.
I mean, we could all learn it from all the aspects of, you know, using our voice to collect other voices, to get enough voices together to make something happen. I mean, that's the only way that anything ever happens, is enough voices are saying the same thing. Enough voices are voting the same way. Enough voices are going and making a difference and saying, this, we think this statue is incorrect. You know, it needs to come.
For whatever reason. Yeah.
You know, and I understand, you know, the frustration, you know, especially in the Black Lives Matter movement, that, you know, we've been doing this for decades. We've been doing the same thing for decades. We've been getting beat up for decades. We've been not been listening to, we've been, you know, part of, you know, segregation, even though it's not, you know, legitimized and written that way. It's all been structurally set up that way, and we're tired of it, and this needs to happen, and we need to make a voice, and we need to make it loud enough that everybody hears it. Which, if you want to get on the news and you want to make that big statement, you know, that's the step. But I think when it comes back to basics, we're all missing the communication end of it. And just talking to people and just learning about what they are and what they do and why they're in the situation they're in. You know, how many of us felt differently about those two officers when we found out that one had been 3 days on the job? Just knowing that little bit about that person, it was like, oh, wait a second. He's been working on a book up until this point, and now he's being put in a situation where a superior officer who supposedly knows what he's doing is showing them what to do. You know, it changes the perspective because we learn a little something about them. Simple. Not that anything's right and wrong, but you know, there is really no black and white. Like I say, there's always gray, and you figure your way through it.
And you know, and that's the part of what you sign up for when you become a police officer is getting thrown into that fire pit. And I mean, and that happened to me. I remember when I had about a week on, and from the academy, I had about a week. I'm driving around my senior man. He's driving in a parking lot, and some lady comes running out of some store. We're driving around like a little strip mall, checking things out. And lady comes running out of the store. There's a lady in there. She's having a heart attack. She's on the ground. She's having a heart attack. And my senior man looks at me. He goes, "Well, go in there. Go deal with it." And I'm like, and of course I'm sitting there like, well, you're the guy. No. You're supposed to show me what to do. So I threw my hat on. I ran in and we started giving CPR. But that's, you know, you signed up to be thrown into the fire. Be prepared to go into the fire and be prepared to act properly.
Yeah, and take some instincts and intuition and gut reaction and part of yourself into whatever you do.
Right.
You know? And I know that's tough with younger people who are learning something, but
there's a fine line between right and wrong in certain situations. When I talk about a fine line between protesting and rioting, and you know, sometimes when you're trying to get the truth or whatever as a police officer, you might have to push that line, but then there's still a point when that's wrong. That's wrong. You can't do that. You can't do that. Come back over here. Get back over here. We'll figure this out. You know, so.
Well, Pete, is there anything that just, as we're finishing off, I know that you know, we kind of cruised through a few things. Is there anything that you would just like to finish with and share or put out there for perspective, or something that can maybe give us inspiration as to what's going to happen on the other side of all of these situations?
You know, I don't know. You know, there's a quote that was given to me by my supervisor of officials for football, and it was my rating for the season for last year. And there was a play where I messed up, but I owned up to it. During the game, we're on national TV. This was bad. I literally got in the car after the game, texted her and said, my career is over. That's how bad it was. And, you know, and then of course on the field, we got through it. And then one of the things he said to me in the rating was, not everything that can be scored should be scored, and not everything that not every let me try. I think I can get it here real quick. But it was basically that, you know, character comes from when somebody's not looking. You know what I'm saying? I know there's that phrase that's, you know, it's not what you do when somebody's watching.
Right.
It's what you do when somebody's not watching. And, you know, right now in this society, everybody's watching with our cameras, and everything's being watched. So it's what we do when we're not being watched, in regards to should we just let everything go? Should we just let it go, status quo? I'm not that guy. Yeah, and if I'm out doing something and I see something, I'm constantly getting yelled at, but don't get involved. Don't get. Well, yeah, somebody's got to get involved. I mean, it's not right. That's not right. You know, right? Even if you just write the license plate down instead of just, you know what? They stole something. Let them have it. No, no. You know, so we're not being nice to each other, and we should be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's simple, isn't it?
Yes.
It seems that way. It should be simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just be kind.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can leave it at that. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Pete. Thank you so
You're
much. And take care of yourself. And maybe we'll touch base again. And
You will, my
a little
friends.
later on. Okay.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye.